The Holy Gospel according to Luke, the 12th chapter.
Glory to you, Lord.
Jesus says, I came to bring fire to the earth, and how I wish it were already kindled. I have a baptism with which to be baptized, and what stress I am under until it is completed. Do you think that I have come to bring peace to the earth? No, I tell you, but rather division. From now on, 5 in one household would be divided, 3 against 2, and 2 against 3. They will be divided. Father against son, and son against father, mother against daughter, and daughter against mother, mother-in-law against her daughter-in-law, and daughter-in-law against mother-in-law. He also said to the crowds, when you see a cloud rising in the west, you immediately say, it is going to rain. And so it happens. And when you see the south wind blowing, you say, there will be scorching heat. And it happens. You hypocrites, you know how to interpret the appearance of earth and sky, but why do you not know how to interpret the present time? The gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, O Christ.
You may be seated. As I listened to the lessons this morning, I thought, ooh, these are hard words. Kind of scary words, too. In so many words, in so many ways, we see in our language vestiges of boundaries. What does it mean to be from the wrong side of the tracks? Or from the wrong part of town? To live in the right neighborhood or the wrong neighborhood? Over the course of time, there has been wave after wave of immigrants, and when the new immigrants come in, consistently they have found themselves in a place where those who were already here declared them to be off limits, out of bounds. It was true in the high school I attended. Perhaps it's true in other high schools that fairly early on people knew what group they belonged to, and if you dared to cross over and reach out or be a part of more than one group, there was a cost to be paid. Some people could pull it off, but for the most part, if you were one of those people, then you didn't associate with these people. There were certain groups that were kind of in the middle, but there were also those groups that were either here or here, and if one reached across those boundaries, those social boundaries, there was a cost. And so what is true perhaps for ethnic boundaries and what is true for those social boundaries also could be said to be true for economic boundaries. In our culture, in the America, we claim that there is a good thing and the option for social mobility, but what people who manage to move up know is often they have to leave behind the folks that they came from. They have to disassociate in one way or another in order to become a part of where they hope to go. We live in a culture that continues to have a variety of boundaries that get drawn and redrawn. And when somebody dares to cross over those boundaries, to reach out across those boundaries, there is often a cost. There's something that gets paid. Now, over the past several weeks, Jesus has been describing what discipleship looks like, and some of that has been in a dialogue with people who have brought questions, and sometimes those were people who were close to Jesus, disciples, and sometimes those were people who were hoping to trip him up a little bit. But whatever the case, Jesus has been lining out for his disciples, for us, what it looks like to be a disciple, to follow this reign of God, this kingdom of heaven that he has been announcing, that he has said has come near. But not only has he declared it, but he has shown it in his actions, reaching out and healing people who often were considered to be untouchable, walking with people and loving people and caring for people and dining with people and being present to people that crossed boundaries. He was announcing a new way of being that is filled with God's way, where all the boundaries that humanity wants to create start to fall away, whether they be around ethnic or social or economic or even gender kinds of things. Jesus announces a new order of things, a new way to do things. But whenever we start to announce a change, whenever we start to enact a change, whenever we start to live differently, then the people who are invested in the way things have always been, in the old order, start to send messages, don't they? Change back. Come back and do it the way it has always been. Don't be doing that. And over time, it becomes more strident, stronger. It even becomes threatening. Change back or else. Or else. Jesus starts to talk about a baptism into which he is baptized, and that it is stressful, it is difficult, and he wants to see that completed. In the ancient world, there were two ways of purifying things. The first was with fire, and the other was with water. Those things that could stand up to fire, well, you used the heat. Those things that couldn't stand up to the heat, you used the water. Through the waters of our baptism, we are called into a new kind of relationship. We are called into being part of this new reign of God, the kingdom of heaven that has come near. And when we encounter who God is and what God has done for us, we are changed. And when we change, the old order starts trying to call us back. Come back and do it the way you've always done it. And if we don't go, then the threats come, huh? Change back or else. This morning, this church will, as I talked about earlier, will acknowledge and indeed commit ourselves to walk with the sixth graders who are going into a new school, and things are changing for them, and they will be living differently. And not only are things changing in terms of the way school is structured, but physically things are changing. Socially things are changing. They're starting to find out about what group they get to belong to. We know that oftentimes, and sixth graders, seventh graders, eighth graders, you will know this if you don't already, that oftentimes as we're going through these transition times, there is a very reality that we often try to build ourselves up by putting other people down. That's the old way of doing things. That is not the reign of God. And so today what we do as a church is we give these young people mirrors and a reminder that in the new order, in the reign of God, in the kingdom of heaven, God has created us and loved us and claimed us as God's own. And that we believe we all belong to this new order where we are called to reach across the boundaries, to reach out to those who are on the outside, untouchable in one way or another. People that too easily get put down or otherwise disrespected. It's a reminder that when people disrespect you as a sixth grader or a seventh grader or eighth grader or as whatever place we are in our life, that we have been claimed by God. Our identity is in God. And indeed, what Jesus points out today, I believe, is that when we are clear about that and when we live into that new way of being, there is division. Some people will reject us and will reject God. And it would be easy to lash out at them. It would be easy to take it out on them for that. But the truth of the matter is, the model we have is a model that continues to reach across the boundaries, to reach out in love, to care for them, to show God's love and compassion, to show God's desire for reconciliation across those boundaries. But it is not easy, it is hard, and sometimes it is painful. I believe that is what Jesus is pointing to. But Jesus also says that the weather is changing, the climate is changing. We know that when the clouds form in the west, there's probably rain coming, huh? It was certainly true in the Mediterranean, because when the winds came from the west, it was coming through the Mediterranean Sea, and it carried water inland to get dumped on them. And when the winds came from the south, it was coming off of the desert, and it was going to bring scorching heat. But what Jesus says is that we are called to recognize that there is something new happening in our place. And what that is that God calls God's people to live in discipleship in a way that continually reaches out, that continually crosses the boundaries, that continually shows God's favor and love for all people, no matter what old Adam tells us, no matter what humanity tells us about how we ought to treat them. That we are called to show them love. For we know the rest of the story. We know that the baptism that Jesus is called to is a baptism that takes him to the cross. And on the cross, he dies, and in the end, that death is not the end of the story, but rather just the beginning for him and for us. It is a beginning that brings the truth of God's love, God's reconciliation, and God's desire for new life for all people. It is that which he announces. It is that which he brings for each and every one of you.